State your name and address for the record, please.
Francis Abigal Polack Nigrosh.
Okay. I guess first I'd be interested in knowing about Grandpa Polack, and as far back as you can, as you know, even people that you may not have met, what's sort of the beginning of his family tree that you're familiar with? I understand they were in England and in Western Europe, isn't that right? Or where were, for example, do you know anything about his grandmother or grandfather?
I don't know how far back it goes, but my grandmother's family were from Spain, from Valencia, Spain. And that's where they got their family name, because you used the family name, the town that you came from, and that was their name.
So
She was Abigail Valencia.
his Grandpa Paula's mother, that was her name.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. And see, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and
And
she had
yeah.
one brother by the name of, golly, I don't know whether he was Leon. No, it was my grandfather's brother's name was Leon. That's how come the Leon Isaac.
Mm.
My grandfather was Isaac, and his brother was Leon. And that's how we chose Leon's name.
Oh, so it was Isaac and
Isaac and Leon were
right, but
my
you just told me Valencia's her first name.
was my grandmother's
Yeah,
name was
yeah.
Abigail.
Abigail, right? Isaac and Abigail,
Yeah.
obviously, right? Of course. Okay, and now
I believe that
she was from Spain, but did she?
her family was
Yeah.
from Spain, and they left Spain for Portugal and then to England. I'm a little gray area there because I think she met my grandfather in London, and I don't know. I think his family had emigrated from Holland, because every once in a while they throw in a few Dutch phrases.
Hmm.
It's sort of, secret talk between the two of them when they didn't want the children to hear.
Well, now you're familiar with them. In other words, you recall them.
My grandmother and
Yeah,
grandfather?
yeah.
Vividly.
Uh,
Oh, sure. We lived in the same house. I was born in the same house, in the same apartment.
in East Cambridge. Where was this?
Cambridgeport.
Cambridgeport.
Yeah.
So they somehow came from London to this country. Would you have any idea when that was?
Well, my father was born here, and he was 21 years old when he married my mother, so they were here for a long time.
Let's see. Let's try to get some years. So
He was not the youngest. And I don't know whether they came here with children or whether they were all born here. I think not. I don't think they were all born here. Probably came to this country with my Aunt Miriam, whom we all call Mamie.
And what did what did Isaac do?
He was a cigar maker.
And he was that when he came here, and then
Yes.
he took up the trade when he got here?
Yes, he was a cigar maker when he came here. He used to work for some big company, and finally he branched out on his own and had quite a thriving business. He did personal cigar making. If you wanted your brand, and he would come up with something for you, or he would supply cigar stores, tobacconists, with his particular brand, and it was quite very much in demand. He was good.
Do you know anything more about what his life was like before he came
I
here?
have no idea. I'm assuming he apprenticed as a cigar maker. Otherwise, where would he have gotten his? Just like my father apprenticed as a plate printer.
And do you know anything else about Abigail's life before she
I
came
haven't
here?
the vaguest idea. I have no idea what she ever did before she became a mother of Miriam, Henry, Mark, Priscilla, and Jack. I have no idea.
Mark and Jack are the only two that I really know.
Yeah.
What happened to Priscilla?
Priscilla died. Priscilla died 2 days before I was born. And we have no idea.
So how old would she have been?
beautiful young adult. We have pictures of her. She's tall and slim and dark and beautiful. No one ever told you why she died or how she died. Big mystery. And my parents...
That make you suspicious about anything?
Too stupid and too young to have any suspicion. She died. My parents wanted to name me for her.
Mm-hmm.
And although they weren't terribly religious, they were told you just don't do that until the mourning period is over. So I was named after my great-grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
my mother's grandmother, who brought her up. And my sister Priscilla was named for the Priscilla who died.
So Priscilla, Mark, Jack, Henry, and
Miriam.
And what happened to her?
Oh, she lived to be a nice, bright, old age. She was
But
Ben's.
Ben Lowe's.
She was Ben and Edward and young Abraham, who died, and Mark. She had 4 sons.
Okay, so the Mark that I know
Mhm.
was Grandpa's cousin. Not
My
his brother.
cousin.
No, right. Okay.
Was my cousin.
All right. So they moved to the.
They settled in Rockland. But are you getting far afield
Well,
from my
let's go back.
intimate ones?
Yeah, let's go back to Isaac and Abigail.
Yeah.
They took up residence in Cambridgeport, and he had a
Cambridgeport.
business there somewhere.
He had his business right smack in the house. He
And
did his cigar making in what we call the little room.
he did it all by himself, or
Then
did he
he
have people come work for him?
did his own. If he ever had anyone working with him, I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know about that. I used to go in there and try to roll cigars like he did in the forms that he had,
Mhm.
and I can still see his beautiful fingers working quickly over
Mhm.
the material with which he worked.
What do you recall? What he was like as a person?
Oh, he was a delightful man. He was delightful. He was auburn-haired.
Mhm.
He was balding quite young.
Mhm.
And the hair was turning gray, and the red mustache was turning gray, and he was just a delightful man. And he and my grandmother were a real love story.
Oh, really?
Oh my God, he doted on her, and before he left the house in the morning, and my sister still does it,
Mhm.
she'll say, "Isaac, turn around," and she'd brush off his
Mhm.
clothes, and that was really something.
And what do you recall about Abigail?
She was a big woman, and she was Queen of the May.
What do you mean?
She sat and people waited on her. She was a wonderful cook. She did everything in a large way, because after all, she had a big family. And she was a strict disciplinarian.
What was the place in Cambridgeport like?
It was what we called in those days a flat. It had several rooms, fireplaces in the rooms, enormous kitchen, which was like a family room. And what else can I tell you about it? It had a bathroom with a tin tub that got painted every so often, and the paint would roll off on your bottom.
Mhm.
What can I tell you about it? I can walk into that apartment right now and find my way about very easily. The workroom, my grandfather's laboratory, was way down the end of the hall, and it smelled aromatic. It was beautiful with all the scents of the
You must
cigar
have
leaves.
seen big piles of tobacco coming in.
Yes.
And how did you come to live in the same block, same building?
Same block. There were like 3 apartments on each side. It was a 6-family house.
Mhm.
And in fact, I think it's still there now. It's a high-priced condominium, since that area of town is really now upscale. I had a huge veranda across the front, divided
What could you see just from there?
What could you see? The street.
Of the house in the street.
Yeah.
And now, did he have a horse-drawn transportation? Or
He walked.
public transportation?
He walked. He walked to Central Square where he did a lot of his business. People came to the house to pick up their orders, or he would call on them and deliver their orders. He used to make cigars for Uncle Ben.
Mm-hmm. Were they religious?
No,
Did they have any
they
religion?
were not. They were religious to a degree, but they were not observant.
Do you know what their politics were at the time?
Republican and Union, for goodness sake. What do you think? He knew gompers.
And let's see. So you recall you were born in a house nearby
I was born in that house,
in
right
the same building,
in the apartment, on the 3rd floor.
and you lived there till
The
you were
grandparents were on one side, we were on the other side.
how old? You lived there till you were how old?
And we moved from there, not too far, and one of the fondest memories I have of my father, and I have lots of memories as a little girl, some as a grown-up too, but we won't go into that. One of the fondest memories I have is the little blue sled, and I was sat in the little blue sled somehow, so I wouldn't fall out, and I can just visualize him pulling me, running, pulling me over to visit my grandparents, which were a couple of blocks away around the corner, and with the snow flying in my face. And he was very handsome, and I could just see him turning to me and laughing, and I'm laughing back. I couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 years old. That I remember.
And let's see. Now, you said you think he was born here, not in London.
He was born in Cambridge. He was born, and I remember the name of the street. It'll come to me. Right off Central Square.
Educated in the public schools.
Oh, yeah.
Where did the musical interest come from? Did that?
I don't know where it started. Did it start in high school? Did it start in grade school? I don't know.
Well, for example, what about his parents? Did they have musical instruments?
No,
Were they
but Jack
musicians?
had a piano education, played piano very well. That's the youngest son. Whether the older ones ever did or not, I don't know. Too young to know about that.
Now, let me just go back. Now, I'm trying to... Did I know Jack?
No. Well,
But was there an...
he was still alive when you were born.
Was there a
but
Jack in the next generation named after him?
No.
Okay. And,
Jack's son
mhm.
is Andy. No, Jack's son. What was his name? What was High's husband's name? That'll come to me too. See, I wasn't prepared for all this, Barry.
All right, you did the best you can remember.
Andy Polack's father was Jack's son. Irving. I know it would come up.
Okay. And then Mark. Okay, now the Mark that I know with the shoe store, right?
Yes.
Was that? I'm kind
Was
of
it Irving's brother?
Irving's brother. So next generation. So there was
Yeah.
Marks in both generations.
Yes.
Okay.
See, in that, now remember, these people they were not Ashkenazi, they were Sephardic,
Mhm.
from the Spanish part.
Well, what can you tell? Yeah.
So in the Sephardic
Mm-hmm.
level, it was proper to name your child after the living grandparent,
Yeah.
like the Talon family, for example.
Yeah. But why couldn't Priscilla be named after I mean, why couldn't you be named after Priscilla? Because she was
I don't know.
had just died, and that's
I don't
that's the
know
reason
how
why-
it got to them,
Yeah,
because they,
yeah.
as I say, they were not
Yeah.
observant.
Yeah.
They were religious in their way, but they were, how that influenced them, I don't know.
And of course, interested in these old burial societies, and I remember. Do you remember
Mhm.
anything about that? The
Yes,
participation
my
in that?
grandfather
Did they belong
was
to a
one.
lodge? Did they go to meetings?
My grandfather was one of the founders of the Hand in Hand
Mm-hmm.
Burial Society, but they dropped the burial and called it society because they did more than bury each other.
What other things?
Financial aid, like an oxy, which
Mm-hmm.
means the helping hand.
How about social, uh, you know, entertainment, not entertainment, but, other types of social functions
Yes,
like
yes, but it all
gatherings or...
revolved mainly around
Mhm.
the society. And then he was also an officer in the Elks, the IOBA.
I
In
know
the
you have an Elks tooth somewhere.
Oh yeah, he was very big with that. And I think that's what uh, promoted my father's interest in the Knights of Pythias. That also was a social
That's
as
vaguely
well as
familiar.
social
It's another type of lodge.
lodge. That's right.
Huh. Now, were they largely Jewish, or was
Yeah.
that a non-sectarian?
Yeah.
Who was Pythias? I wonder.
Somehow he was he, he was non-sectarian. Somehow the Pythians were mainly Jewish, and I don't know what the origin of that was. They did lots of good works.
For example.
Oh, hospital work and children's work. It's a little gray area because I know that there was some kind of an investment that my grandfather had, a money that he put in, that he got some kind of a small dividend from in small change. And whenever there was a meeting and he got the small change in a little change envelope, a paper envelope like it's still used today,
Mm-hmm.
he would give it to me. That was
Hmm.
my money.
Hmm.
I don't know what I did with that. Probably went into the bank.
Okay, well let's trace Nana Polack's family a little bit so that we get back to Cambridgeport. I'm always very confused about it, and I never have it straight.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I wanted to.
Well, that's
do
how
this.
come I met up with these cousins who are
Right.
having a
I know.
meeting Sunday.
I know. Well, we should go there and listen to them, but.
You should? They didn't know anything. That's why they sought me out. They were stunned to
Yeah.
learn
All right. Well,
what
what
they
can you
learned.
tell me? What do you know? What do you know about her grandparents? Well, first of all, she was not raised by her parents, right?
My mother's mother abandoned her after she was 2 weeks old. Abandoned her in the care of my great-grandmother, for whom I'm named.
So, I see. So she was basically raised by her grandmother.
Until she was 8 years old and was shipped to this country.
What do you know about the reason, or do you know anything about the reason why she was left by her mother? What happened to her mother?
Have no idea.
Do you know what happened to her?
Have no idea. Do I know? I sure do know.
What?
She was married. I'm raising the question. Married to Sam Pavalonsky. Was anglicized to Paul by some of the members of the family. He was in the army. He was drafted into the Russian army. He was off saving the world, not by choice. And she
Yeah.
had my mother, had a child.
So she was
left.
pregnant when her husband was in the military.
Yeah.
And then soon after she had your mother,
Yes.
she left?
She
Or
left
just
and
gave
she
up
came
baby?
to this country.
She came here ahead of her.
She never saw him again until my wedding.
Never saw who again?
Sam, my
Okay.
biological grandfather.
Okay. So Sam was in the Russian army.
Right.
And your grandmother's name again was?
Sarah
Sarah.
Radin, R-A-D-I-N. Sarah Radin.
I don't think I've ever heard that name.
Why you heard it now?
So she left. What did they call her? Did they call her Mary? They didn't call her Mary. Someone called her that. That wasn't really her name. They called her
Yes.
that. May. What's the difference
Well,
between May and Mary?
my father called her May as a sort of a
it was
nickname, a
actually
love
Mary.
name. Her
I mean,
name was
that's
Mary.
Not normally thought of as a Jewish name. So
Why?
was it at that time?
Honey,
Yeah.
Mary was a Jewish name 2,000 years
Okay.
ago.
All right.
Are you with
So-
that?
Okay.
Okay.
So she gave Mary up to her own
She
mother.
left her
She left
with
her.
her own mother.
Okay. And came here without Sam, without any man, or as far as you know.
Now, I don't know whether she knew the man that she married.
Well, did she ever get divorced from Sam?
Who knows?
Unclear.
Yeah. Did
Okay.
she ever get a get? Were they ever married? Did they ever get a divorce? So when I met these cousins who had looked me up, and we were talking about it in the gracious area of the Charles Hotel in Howard Square,
Mm-hmm.
the gentleman said, and he's very nice, he says, "Well, now, we're not here to sit in judgment." I said to him, "Bob, I'm not judging them. How could I possibly judge them? You wanted to know, and I'm telling you what I know.
Okay.
I'm not judging them."
We'll get to those people in a few
Okay.
minutes. Okay, so now, your grandmother's name was?
Sarah.
I'm sorry. Your great-grandmother's name was, who raised
Francis.
her name was
Russian adaptation
Roland.
was it Fagel? It was translated to Francis.
Did they ever come to this country?
Never.
Okay, do we know anything about what happened to them?
She was a widow, and I don't know anything about her husband.
Mm-hmm. She was already a widow when she raised your mother.
As far as my mother knew.
Yeah, okay.
And she had a small dairy farm.
And where was this now?
Well, it was called Aishashuk, which was a suburb of Vilna. And Aishashuk had come into prominence not too long ago, when all the trouble began again about where are the borderlines. And Aishashuk was demolished. And at that time, the pogroms were building up. And that was one of the reasons, and because she was growing older, that my mother said that her grandmother decided that it was better to get rid of her out of that country.
Okay. How was that accomplished?
Well, my mother came here with another cousin, whom we call Little Rosie, Rose Berkowitz. She was a cousin from the Berkowitz clan, Virgin, and some of the Berkowitz clan came here, and you've met some of them. So she came here with Little Rosie. I have to say Little Rosie. And Rosie, I think, was about 2 years older than my mother. And I have that picture up in the study of my great-grandmother with the sheitel, and my mother and Little Rosie with a basket of artificial flowers,
I know the picture, yeah.
getting ready to be shipped steerage to this country.
You think that was really taken at that very time when they were coming here?
Yes. That's
So
my mother
the
came
two
here
young
with
girls, no adults accompanied them?
No.
And who was supposed to meet them? Anybody?
Somebody met them at Ellis Island. I don't know who. And I don't know how. The meeting was arranged in Boston with her mother, stepfather, and 5 kids. They already had 5 other children.
So when she came here,
Mm-hmm.
she then went back into the custody of Sarah for some period of time?
Yeah. She took up permanent residence with her mother and stepfather.
And what about the little
and
Rosie?
5
Who did
kids.
little Rosie live with also?
Rosie had some other relative. Now, I don't know whether that was my grandmother's sister, Fanny Berkowitz. I don't know whether she lived with her, but she lived here and there and here and there, and even lived with us for a time when she was a young woman.
Oh. So when Mary came here then,
Mm-hmm.
she was 9, 10, 11, 12? How old was she in the picture, do you think?
She was 8 in the picture, 7 or 8. She had written on the back of it, picture of me at 7 years old. It was either 7 or 8.
So then she comes back into the custody of her natural
She's
mother.
with her natural mother, whom she had never met before.
Never met.
Never knew her.
4 half brothers?
5.
Sisters? 5 half brothers and sisters?
1 died. And then, not too long after that, her mother gave birth to twins. Max was one of the twins, and the other twin died.
So she continued to have children even after
Max
Nana
was
came
the
here.
youngest.
Okay. And what was Sarah's husband's name that she married?
His name was Sam
Second
also.
husband. Sam.
Sam
Who's Sam?
Kaminsky.
Sam Kaminsky.
All right.
Okay, so.
Sam Kaminsky had one eye, and the thought was in my, when I opened up my ears in the family, that his eye was probably deliberately ruined so that he wouldn't be drafted. Just like your grandfather Nigrosh with the leg. That was one of the things that people did to keep their sons out of the army.
I don't remember. Did you tell me that when we talked about there? So we're back in Russia now just for a moment with Grandpa Nigrosh. His leg was deliberately injured by
This is what we're told. I don't know how it was broken.
Yeah. I remember he had these funny
indentations. And he was
in a cast and all
he
that.
was kept to keep warm over the fireplace. They had place, and he used to put pennies. People would give him money,
in some kind of cast.
And he put the money in the cast, and that's what made those indentations. Yeah. We were told.
Sorry, I remember that story all the way. Okay,
so getting
now,
back to the two
Sarah
Sams.
And Sam number 2.
She didn't ever have to worry about talking in her sleep.
Did you know Sarah and Sam number 2?
Oh, sure.
Can you tell me about them?
Well, I was the first grandchild from any of this gang, because remember, my mother was the oldest. And she married at 18. She says she got younger every time she told the story. But I think I was born when she was 18 or 19. And I was the first grandchild. And Sam Kaminsky adored me. He took me to shul with him to show me off to the congregation and everything.
How did he make a living?
He used to have variety stores. He was a shopkeeper. And he had them in 2 or 3 different places. And when the neighborhoods got too bad, wasn't making enough, he'd pick up and go to a different location. And I remember going to his store, and he'd give me candy and pieces of gum. And when the neighborhoods got too bad, or he wasn't making enough, he'd pick up and go to a different location. And I remember going to his store, and he'd give me candy and pieces of gum and stuff.
And now, is there any? I picked up the idea that Nana came, when she came from Europe, that there was a little bit of an underground railroad type of a situation. Is that true? That hiding?
There may have been. I am not privy to that. There may have been, but she had every authentic reason for being here. This was her mother. It isn't as if she was being imported for profit by anybody.
Did she escape, like, actual danger or in
she escaped
Russia,
danger,
or was it just the thought that it was coming?
It was evidently all around them. Nothing new. Did you see Fiddler on the Roof?
Do you know her
True story.
The year of her birth, roughly then?
The year of her birth. Well, let's figure the fact that I'm 83, and she says that she was 19 when I was born. So what does that make her today? 100 and something.
Yeah. So, okay. So she came here practically just at the turn of the century.
Just about, yeah.
Okay. And what were her relations with her half-siblings and everything?
One of them hated her desperately. To the day of her death, she hated her.
Which one was that?
Rose. The oldest one.
Yeah, and I had picked up the idea that either she felt or you felt or someone felt that she was not treated fairly in this, let's say, new family or whatever.
Well, the minute she could speak any English, she had to go to work. Oh, at one point her stepfather had a butcher shop in Cambridge, near Central Square, and that's where my father first saw her, in the window of the butcher shop, and he thought, gee, I'd like to know her. And that's where their romance began. And when she was 14, and she looked older, you've seen her picture in a huge plumed hat? She got herself a job in Siegel's department store, which was the department store of the time.
In Boston?
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
the age of 14. She'd already been at work before then?
She had worked in the butcher shop.
Do you know what her education was?
Yes, she went the Phillips School. She graduated the grammar school. She went into high school. Whether she finished high school with a diploma, I'm not sure. Never heard about that. But she was desperate for education and desperate to lose any semblance of an accent because she didn't want to be called a greenhorn or greenie. She did everything she could to perfect that, and there never was a trace of an accent so far as I can recall, although she remembered a good deal of some of the languages. She had Polish and she had a little Russian besides the Yiddish, because she didn't know whether she lived in Poland or Russia. They were forever fighting about the boundary lines outside of Vilna.
So
I still do.
I don't have the geography in mind, so it's on the border between where it was at the time.
It was either Poland or Russia.
Did anyone ever go back to any of these places to visit them? To see
Yes, somebody went back to scout out whatever the heck there was. I think it was one of the Berkowitz men, you know, from Old Mr. Boston went back, and there's nothing there. Decimated, gone.
Okay, so now we have Henry and May. So she was 14 when they met?
Yes.
And how old do you suppose when they began to cohabit and get married and all?
They never cohabited, for heaven's sake.
Okay,
She
when
didn't
they-
know what
so
was
how-
happening.
so when-
She didn't know how it happened that that she became pregnant, for goodness sake.
Eventually she figured it out.
She must have, somehow.
So they were married when she was 14? Or
They were
15?
married when, it's hard to say because, like I say, couldn't really, she figured her birth date
At different
according to
times
when they
what-
when they built the bridge.
Yeah.
In fact, on her gravestone, I even lied about her age because I figured, Mother, you'd like it better this way.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, what difference would you anyway?
That's right, surprised me. So anyway, she was very young, and I was born in the apartment house, and she hemorrhaged when I was born, and she claimed that I almost killed her, and she didn't like me very much for that.
Great. So,
I was,
off to a
whenever
good
she
start,
got
huh?
angry with me, I was always the unwanted child. What are you doing here? I never wanted you anyway.
God, and today we think that's sort of a bad thing to say to your kids.
Well,
It just rolled right off your back.
it hurt a little bit, and then I got accustomed to it.
She had a temper.
Well, yes, but it was always wait till your father gets home.
What would you
know,
say?
he was the disciplinarian.
What would you say? How would you describe her disposition in general as a young
Disposition
woman?
in general, she was always very social-minded and outgoing, and she loved sociability and like that.
And
She was always a fancy lady, and you remember she was beautiful.
did she ever work?
Oh yes, I told you. You mean after
After-
marriage?
Yeah.
No wife of mine is ever going to work.
So that was the way it was.
But that isn't exactly what happened, because as she grew older, and we were living in West Somerville at the time, and some of her neighbors and friends got jobs for Christmas, and they did other little things to augment their pocket money. She worked at one of the dining halls at Harvard. She was in there when I was working at the bank. She'd go there for a few hours a week. No one was supposed to know, but she loved it. She loved it because she was involved with the students and at odd hours, only at dining hours. And she also, there was, I don't know if you remember the name Park Snow. Park Snow was a department store, and they had many. Well, there was one in Davis Square, and she worked in there part-time as a salesperson, because she had background at that, at Siegel's. Very fancy.
And
like
Henry
that.
had two careers, basically.
Yes.
Music and
He was a plate
lithography.
printer, and he taught music.
And tell me about, what do you recall about the printing and what he did there?
Well, everybody was an apprentice in those days.
Mhm.
That was the only way you learned. And he learned that skillful trade.
And what did he do for hammets?
Same thing.
He was,
Diplomas.
that's who, he was printing diplomas
Engraved
for hammets.
diplomas,
But
right.
there would be hammet things, I can't remember,
Right.
erasers or chalk
Right,
or...
right.
They still exist today, by the way.
Yes,
And they're still,
yeah.
we can find things that
Yeah.
they make in school supplies.
The company that he worked for, Vaux Swain, which was a very elegant printing, place for engraving, they did all the fancy upscale shops all over the place. They went out of business more or less. But there was a terrible depression, Barry. Nobody was earning anything. And if it wasn't for the little bit that he got from his music during those times, I don't know what he would have done.
Well, who had money to pay for music then? Music lessons?
The kids, someone always wanted to play the trumpet. And he really did teach some of the really famous jazz and music players.
Do you know where he got his instruction?
I don't know. I don't know whether it started when he was in high school or what. Because he did go to Ringe Technical.
Yeah.
He may have picked up some of his printing skills there. Whether he ever graduated or not, I don't know. I don't know about that. But he went to Ringe and he played football there.
Now, a lot of pictures of him in military garb.
That was all
martial
from the
was an
music.
interest.
And of course, in the National Guard. He was in the 101st Regiment Band. But that was in the National Guard.
And now the places you lived, so you lived in Cambridgeport, and then where did you live after that?
After that, we moved to a whole new section that was built in Cambridgeport. 3 or 4 three-story houses. And there we had a very interesting mix of people. We had the Dixons, Mr. Dixon, Harry, and his cousin, the other cousin, who used to play in one of my father's bands, because my father then started to contract out orchestras. So the 2 Dixon cousins played with him.
And he was union musician, right?
Oh,
This was all
of course.
very union
Oh,
stuff.
very union, very, very
How can you
union.
be a Republican and a union person at the same time?
Don't forget that unions at that time were highly, highly ethical and highly, highly desirable because of the slave labor and the child labor laws. There were no such things. And it was a very idealistic thing. It's a different thing than it is today.
No, I understand that. But still, it was organized labor, not management.
Yeah, it had to be. Otherwise, if they didn't band together, more ladies would have been killed in the shirtwaist factory. They had to do this. This was all part of women's suffragette, too.
So, you moved to a new section, you're saying?
Yes. Then my mother
Was
was
it actually a new building?
brand new,
But you were renting?
renting.
Okay.
Then we moved to North Cambridge, to Chiltern Street, North Cambridge, which was a step up.
What was the reason for that move?
Telephone.
I have to get that. I guess, hold on a minute. Sorry. So we just moved to. I'm trying to understand. What was the reason? You say the move was an upgrade.
It was upgrade.
To
yeah.
what? Priscilla was born then, obviously.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And,
Priscilla was born in the enclave with the Dixons and a few other people who became famous.
Was she any less of a surprise accident than you were?
Oh, she was planned. By then, my mother and father had become sophisticated. She was planned. You ask her. She was really coddled and wonderful.
And so she
And
got
I
the name
loved
that
her.
you didn't get.
She
Priscilla.
got the name I didn't get, yeah.
Okay.
But that was all right with me. It didn't make any
You're ahead of
difference to me.
me.
Yeah. She was a beautiful child.
Okay, and you're how many years apart now?
4.5. 5.5. 5.5.
Leon and I are 4.5.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay. Now you went to, through Cambridge public schools.
All the way up to the second year of high school when my parents, wait a minute, we skipped a whole new, a whole other address.
No? Okay, go ahead.
Times got hard.
Mhm.
My father's job was, they couldn't afford to keep this apartment in North Cambridge.
Oh, really?
So we moved back to Cambridge Port on River Street, and that's where I met Willa, because Willa lived next door.
You showed me the building. I remember it
It
had
has burned down since.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh no, that's no. What I remember is the building that she lived in as an adult with her young family.
Oh, that's different.
Because I remember it had this big semicircular glass
yes,
thing over the
yes,
door.
yes. That's
all I really
different.
remember of that.
No, but this was back to Cambridge Port.
Mm-hmm.
Not
So this
too.
was a downgrade now.
Yeah, but a huge place.
Yeah.
And my father taught there, and he taught at the Cambridge Conservatory.
Wasn't new. It
No.
wasn't small. Was the neighborhood less desirable?
The neighborhood was a little less desirable at the time, but the apartment itself was much larger, and it had other things about it. It evidently had been quite elegant at one time. It had a dumb waiter to bring things up from the first level, and it had a room off the kitchen, which was presumably for a maid in years before, and the rooms were big. This also had a tub with peeling paint.
Can't get away from it. Huh?
No, not then. It was considered quite good to have a tub at all. But the place that we had moved from had a porcelain tub, and here we were back to a tin tub. But we didn't care. Backyard was the big field where we went skating, where we had all kinds of, yes. Biologist.
Yeah. Okay. No, we're back in Cambridge Port.
Yeah.
You were describing the.
We're on River Street now. And I'm finishing school in the Webster Grammar School. And then on to Cambridge High School.
No, so this is right during the Depression we're talking about.
Yeah.
But at some point, apparently, Henry and Mary bought a house eventually.
This is
So
after
something must have happened.
from there.
Fortunes must have perked up
Yes,
again.
my father's music business began to burgeon. He contracted orchestras here and there. He played at fancy clubs and
How
did
fancy?
quite well.
What sort of stuff are we talking about?
We're talking about, what names can I think of? In Wayland, it's now a temple. It was called, I'd have to think about the name.
It was a nightclub with entertainment, other types
Beautiful
of...
big spread, looked like you were entering a mansion, and it was very high-class music and high-class entertainment. And I can't think of the name now.
Okay.
It'll come to me.
But you were going to, you were back in Cambridge, you were finishing school, you were saying. And now let's see, you were like one of the youngest people in your class, is that right?
I was the
And
youngest
you
graduate.
Skipped some grades?
Two.
Or which 2 grades?
Skipped 2 grades. 3rd and 5th, I think.
And how did you occupy yourself during your high school years?
I did a little babysitting. I was friendly with Willa and Rita Haley. There was a Catholic, a Protestant, and a Jew. We got along very nicely together. We were fine. Willa was a good scholar.
Were there problems with you relating with each other as far as parents and tolerance and all that kind of stuff?
No. One of my friends was in the Navarro family. One of the sons went into the priesthood, but he didn't stay there very long, and I can understand why. No, didn't. Those things never came up in our young minds. Rita, we helped.
Well, I was thinking of the parents' minds, not the children.
Rita, we helped study her catechism. That's how I know so much about the catechism. She had to learn it by heart, and we helped her study. So there were the three of us. Rita was not a scholar. She was boy crazy. She married very young. She's been married twice since that I know of, but I've lost track of it since. Willa was an excellent scholar. I think it was between Willa and me with scholarship ratings. And out of high school, I couldn't go on to any further education. Neither could she, because her father worked for the bookbindery.
Was it discussed? Do you remember thinking about it?
Oh, yeah. So what did I do? I took a course, BU at night, to polish up on my stenography skills. And at the same time, I took a course at college, at the Mass College of Art.
That's where you got your shorthand. I remember you used to write.
Well, I got some of it at high school.
Uh-huh.
But I did that to polish it because I thought, I'm not going to become an artist. This is ridiculous. So I took the course to polish up on my stenography skills, and I got a job right away. And then I went to work for the
you
finance
have an old
company.
high school yearbook with some of your
My
drawings.
accomplishment, yes, I was the artist for
Sort
the
of
yearbook.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you do other art for yourself at home, and what happened to it all?
I used to draw and paint, and pastels was my medium. Funny, we talked about that just the other night when I was with Priscilla and Maury. I don't even know how it came up with drawing and painting, and they had just bought another work of art. And talk got around to the fact that in our bedroom that Priscilla and I shared at home in West Somerville, I had pictures all around that I had done. One day I came home, they were all gone. They were gone. What happened here? My mother had taken them all down. Well, where are they? I burned them.
Fern, was there any discussion as to why?
I just clammed up. What can you do?
Do you think that she was angry at you for some reason?
No, she just wanted to redecorate the room and was tired of seeing that stuff.
She didn't think there was any value to them, but enough to put them aside
Never mind
for you to
to-
save? I'm just trying to
This is
understand.
what she did. She just did it.
Well, but you wouldn't do such a thing.
I saved my kids' first year.
Yeah, so what do you make of what she did in terms of
You
how
want
she
me to
was
go back?
thinking?
She didn't want me anyway. Don't forget that.
Well, was that part of the implication? I mean,
I don't know.
Well, I mean,
I
do you
never
recall-
questioned any of that.
Do you
Never
think,
diminished my love for her as my mother.
did you ever question hers for you?
No. No.
So
You just took it.
In other words, you don't think you ever formed the idea that you really were unwanted.
May I tell you the latest, greatest incident of that?
Yeah.
Do you remember I had a white coat that your father had sent away from me because he saw it in a magazine and he thought I should have that coat? It was a white coat. I had it for years. In fact, Ellen had it relined for me at one point. I loved it so. I don't think you could get it around me now. But I had this white coat. What this North Country type of stuff. It was a very beautiful white coat. I had it for a long time. My mother was hospitalized, and I was going out with your father and I think the Levins, and I wanted to stop by the hospital to see how she was doing. And she was just coming out of a treatment room of some kind, and they had given her this Lasix. Lasix is kind of a pink medicine. When I have to take it, I take it pill form, but they had given her, and it was really pink. And the nurse was standing over her saying, "Come on now, Mary, you have to have this. This is good for you." And I'm standing there and I'm saying, "Mother, just take it. You'll take it and you'll forget about it 2 minutes later." and she went like this with the pink medicine all the way down my white coat. And she said, "Who needs you? I never wanted you anyhow."
And at that time, you think she was under the influence of any medication or
Probably.
anything?
I don't think she would have said it in front of the nurse or anything. If she just wasn't well at that point.
And now, how old were you when this happened, do you think? How old?
Married. Married. My father had gone.
So this is a sentiment that came out from time to time?
Oh,
or
yes.
frequently? Or?
Oh, yeah, not from time to time.
But the implication is not for Priscilla. She didn't say such things to her?
Oh,
or did she have
no.
equivalent things
Oh,
for her,
no,
or-
no, 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 no.
And, but, so, was there a double standard, a big double standard in terms of the way you two were treated?
Remember, I got out early and started in a living, was turning money into the house. Okay?
All of it, most of it, some of it?
Some of it. We had made
How
an
was that
agreement.
arrived? You had an agreement,
We
you
had an
both agreed
agreement.
to.
Yeah, because I had to clothe and feed myself. And when I would go off to work, Priscilla would help herself to whatever clothes were in the closet that she wanted and use up all my fingernail polish and that sort of thing. And finally one day I said to her, "Priscilla, you can use my fingernail polish. When it gets down to almost empty, will you please let me know?"
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't impair our getting along together ever. We always got along together very well. But there was no question who was my mother's favorite.
Did you participate a lot in caring for her and raising her, your younger sister?
I used to say things like that. Does she have to follow me everywhere I go? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that all faded away after we reached a certain level. We were that far apart in ages, but we became closer as we matured. In fact, her graduation picture, she's wearing the same dress I wore in my graduation picture. That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't matter anymore. Those things didn't matter at all.
Okay, so you were studying art and stenography.
Yeah.
And that's what is now called the Mass College of Art, but used to be called something else.
Yeah.
And that's where...
School of Art. It was the School of Art.
That's where this whole thing...
And it was
where
in
Al
town,
was
near
there,
Park
et cetera.
Square, yeah.
Okay. And
There was no future for me.
as an artist?
None. None. My grandfather had a friend who had something to do with a greeting card company, and I had done a few little things, and he submitted it to them, and he could get me a job there, but I never followed that through. Because the finance company, and it was my mother who pushed me to apply to the finance company, which was in Davis Square. And I went in there.
She saw an ad or what?
No, Park Snow was on the first
I
level.
see.
Okay.
Okay.
So and I said, "Mother, I'm not old enough yet. I don't even have a working permit." So I went up there and I applied for a job, and I went to work stuffing envelopes for some kind of an ad campaign.
Mm.
But they soon discovered that I knew how to type and take
Mhm.
shorthand, and wanted to know did I want a permanent job, because there was an opening in Waltham.
Mm-hmm.
You know Waltham,
Mm.
where I worked for 15 years. And so I lied about my age, and at that time they weren't too fussy about that. So I went to work with them. How old was I then? About 16, I think. Sure. I figured, because I had to leave Waltham when I got married.
And the job in Waltham was with what company?
At that time it was called Family Finance, I think. That's where I got some of my banking skills.
So you were a loan arranger?
God, that's terrible. Repossessing people's. Waltham Watch Factory closed down. Nobody was working. People stood in line on going up the stairs to pay their $2 a week or to get their $50 to meet the food or the rent. It was terrible. I was rich. I was getting $20 a week. $25 a week.
So this was of some value to your parents then.
Oh, sure.
But at that point, no. When did the move to Somerville come?
In my freshman year, sophomore year, my second year in high school.
So that how, but you were, okay. How much did your working have to do with their ability to buy that house? Didn't work.
I don't think so.
Okay.
And my mother was frugal. My mother was careful.
And they bought a two-family house.
Yeah.
And with the intention of having a tenant. It was a new when they bought it?
Brand new.
On Fairfax Street.
Right.
29?
I think so.
29? Same as 29
Something like
Gabriel.
that.
And so that was a new house.
Mm-hmm.
And had a coal furnace downstairs. Of course, every place you lived had a coal furnace up till then, I'm sure.
Yes, but then didn't he change to something? I don't remember.
Probably put in an oil burner after a while.
I
But I
think
remember
so.
myself.
Because I have the coal hod.
I remember the coal truck. I remember
Yeah.
the coal chute. I remember the
Right.
coal pile.
Yes.
And I remember the furnace.
I have the coal hod. It's got a great big geranium
Yeah.
plant in it now.
Right. I do remember that.
Don't let that go out of the family.
Yeah. Okay. And I remember there was like a back porch,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a yard. And I remember the garage next door with the 2 cement tracks for the tires, and we all played ball out there in that little
Right.
alcove called between the 2
Right.
buildings with the garage.
I used to have to empty the pail under the refrigerator because there
Right.
was ice
I remember the kerosene hot water heater or some type of hot water heater in the kitchen.
in the bathroom.
Was it in the bathroom?
Carry it
I remember
into the
something next
bathroom when
to
the kids were
something
taking a
next to the
bath.
stove. I remember the pantry. I remember the
Yeah.
salt box.
Mm-hmm.
And
My mother was a good cook.
I remember the talk through the hole in the wall thing. You know.
A who's it?
That's called a who's it?
That was a who's it.
Who's it?
You press down
Yeah.
the little
Yeah.
thing to open up the aperture and you
Yeah.
yell down, who's it?
Yeah. Okay, I remember that. So, now, what was your mother's social life like during that period of time? Do you know?
Well, she was very friendly with some of the neighbors. They had a few raucous parties in the house I used to lie there and listen to. She had that kind of a social life. Then she had a few other lady friends that she'd go in town to a little matinee or a little movie or a little theater. Everything was little.
Mm-hmm. And so she was happy and pleased to have this new house and everything?
Oh, yes. This is what her greatest desire was to own one of those houses in this whole new development. Dilboy Field was at the bottom of the street in those days,
Mm-hmm.
but for some reason Dilboy Field was moved further down on the same side of the street, but a little further away. And there was a skating rink there. I used to go there. I used to go skating there. Loved to skate. And who were my friends then? I had a few close friends then.
And did you do things as a family? And obviously you went to Revere Beach.
Oh
Did your
yeah,
father
with my
play the
father's band
trumpet?
concert. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
What
Those were
else?
great days.
Travel at all?
I did a little travel, but mostly it had to do with the music part of it, his
Mm-hmm.
involvement.
Okay, so let's see. You finished high school. You were working in Waltham. Okay, and you must have something about Oak Island or Plum Island or something for me as far as meeting Dad. Right?
I met this girl when there was I got another part-time job when I was still in high school at Marks and Brothers Clothiers.
Mm-hmm.
Got that?
Mm-hmm.
Marks and Brothers was a $2 a week clothing place, men's and women's. I even learned how to measure the inseam on a man's pants.
Mm-hmm.
And
What do you mean $2 a week? Explain what you're.
it was an installment plan kind of shop. Marx and Brothers was a big chain.
So there were people that were constantly making payments, but also getting new clothes. Was sort of like
Right.
a clothing subscription.
Absolutely. Just like now when you have your plastic and you buy something and you pay it off according to how you feel and you paid a premium. Same thing with Marx and Brothers. That's what their job was.
So it was a combination credit company and clothing company.
Yes. And the girl who was the head bookkeeper was Rose Fisher, who lived in Winthrop. She traveled from Winthrop to Davis Square, Somerville. And we became friendly. And through her, I met 2 or 3 other girls about the same age, young women. And we had a wonderful time together. We would go to the theater together. We went on a vacation together. We went up to Salem, New Hampshire, because the parents of an old boyfriend of mine owned a hotel in Salem, New Hampshire. Not too far from the dog track, or the track. I'm getting dry.
Would you like me to get you something? What would you like? Juice?
I think I'm getting through talking. Clever. And we would meet in each other's homes. And I had met this young man who belonged to a group called the Hillsides. And the Hillsides would come. They would advertise themselves as the Women's Home Companions. They would come to our house, and we would have a very pleasant evening. We would play charades and stuff like that. Everything was so innocent, Barry, so innocent. When I think back, and I know what goes on today, incredible. And one of the girls would have a meeting, and they'd invite the boys, but they wouldn't invite all the boys because they didn't like him, but they liked him. And so it went. That was our social life.
So that included Dad and Saul, and who else?
Saul, yeah. Well, there was quite a group.
Any other people that I would know?
That you would know. You remember the man who had the shoe store, Harry, who went to war. We used to write to him. Remember Eddie Sidman?
Okay. Guess I don't know.
Chick Gill.
So you were how old when you met?
When I met your father? 13. On the beach.
And how long did this courtship last?
We married when I was 23.
10 years. Well, but you obviously was on and off and not really
Right.
hot and heavy in the beginning.
Right. The man whose parents owned the hotel in Salem, New Hampshire, really wanted to marry. She really wanted that. But
And what was your parents' attitude towards your dating, your independence, and your finding a husband and getting married?
well, at one point in time, my father thought that every time I went out on a date, I'd come home pregnant. He had no idea. He had absolutely no idea how innocent it was in those days, or at least with me. And I was always in love with your father, no matter what. And even when Danny Friedman wanted to marry me, and even when my mother was sure that Dr. Adelman would be just the one, and I said, Mother, I can't stand him because he's got too many hands, and I'm just not going to see him anymore. She couldn't understand that. He was a doctor.
So what did they think about Dad?
My mother always loved him. She called him Sonny. My Sonny. She really loved him. She loved Maury too. But I think she loved your father more because he was sweet and considerate and nice. He was much like you know.
Oh, that sweet?
Was he sweet? Yeah. They both liked him.
So was
But
he
was just
struggling?
a kid. He was in school. He was in college. What was his future?
Well, what was his future? I mean,
It was nothing.
Did he feel that he had a future?
He felt he had a future. He was dedicated to his work. He loved his work.
And not going into the family business, was that?
Oh, he couldn't. He worked there since the time he was able to tie bundles.
And
He heard the yelling and the screaming and the backbiting and the fighting. That was not for him. It
Is
was
that
not
what it
his
was?
temperament.
Was that what it was?
One of the reasons. Furthermore, he had this wonderful talent.
I remember a story to the extent that his parents were not particularly supportive of his going off. I don't know if it's a true story, but something about Grandpa missing his graduation from MIT. Is that true?
Oh, yeah, they went to a movie.
They forgot, or it wasn't important to them? Or?
Class day, they didn't show up. Did they come to the graduation? They missed a couple of the events.
Was that a big disappointment for them?
Of course, it was a terrible disappointment to him.
How did he understand it? What do you think he felt?
He took it passively.
I mean, was that punishment for not being in the family business? For straying apart from the family?
No.
Don't you think
Just
that's what
wasn't
it was?
important.
Well, yeah, but, I mean, so underneath that, you don't think...
I don't think so.
There was no idea that he was doing the wrong thing by choosing his own path.
They resented, my father-in-law resented the tuition, which was...
Who paid it?
Well, I don't know whether your father paid it out of his meager salary from the Paris box, or whether Max had a cough up, or whether Jenny said, this is important.
No.
I don't know. It could have been Jenny.
So you think they may have helped with his education?
Yeah, but you know...
I mean, they were pretty wealthy at that
They were
period of history.
very wealthy at that
So
time.
what about this resentment? Why would he resent it?
I don't know if... Was there any resentment if there was? I never
You said
felt
the
it.
tuition, you said.
The tuition, I started to tell you, was minimal.
Yeah.
And he lived at home.
Yeah. So eventually he wound up designing them a house.
Yes, my mother-in-law was very proud of everything he did. She thought the sun rose and set on him. Although, she confided to me many, many years later that Saul was her first child.
Right.
That when she came...
Well learned this way.
Yeah.
So now you and Dad decided to marry. Do you remember his proposal?
Vividly.
What do you remember at the time?
Oh yes, I do.
Where were you? What happened?
In the kitchen of my parents' house.
This was not a big surprise, or was?
Yeah, it rocked me.
Really?
Couldn't believe it. He'd
Really?
evidently talked to his parents about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jenny and Sadie had gone out and selected a hope chest.
Mm-hmm.
And Sadie had picked out a nightgown.
Before he even asked you?
Yeah.
Wasn't expecting no for an answer, apparently.
Obviously.
And then what?
So the thing was, we were going to go to some Zionist thing, New Year's Eve party.
Mm-hmm.
And did he tell me I was going to get a ring that night, or did I get the ring that night? I don't know, but his famous words were not, will you marry me? No down on the knee kind of stuff like that. His words, and I think I can quote him verbatim, you know, I think our gooses are both cooked. What do you say we plan a marriage? Plan to get married. I said, what? Something like that. Very prosaic.
Huh.
Our gooses are both cooked. He knew I had been, in fact, I had to cancel a date. I said, you know, you caught me kind of by surprise, and it's fine with me.
Huh.
I love you dearly, this sort of thing, and have for a long time. There was no question about that, but I never thought that anything was ever really going
But
to
you
come of
weren't
it.
going steady at the time.
No. I was wearing his pin,
Huh.
which I had lost in a snowbank, and I had a dream where it was, and there it was.
Huh.
I retrieved it, and I still have it on my charm bracelet.
Huh. Okay, so, now, was he at college at that point? No?
Yeah, yeah,
Studying.
yeah.
So when did you take up residence together?
After
Where
we
was
got
it?
married.
Where was it?
Where was it?
Yeah, was it that place?
Ransom Road.
So you lived there. Where else did you live?
Then we moved to Mount Hood because I was pregnant. I needed
Okay.
another room with
Yeah.
a porch, which it got.
Okay. And was the next place after that the house?
Yes.
Okay. Was Mount Hood the one? I remember I was shown one of these places, and you have some photographs. What I remember, of course, is the tinted circular mirror. That was Mount Hood, sort of like that.
Mhm. That was Mount Hood.
Um,
Was that Mount Hood or was that Ransom Road? I'm not sure. I have to think about that.
Okay. And you decided at what point to have a child? Presume was not
Took
just a
us
big surprise to you.
took 5 years.
By this point, you knew where babies came
Yeah,
from.
I know.
and-
We tried for 5 years.
Oh, you were trying all that time.
Sure.
It wasn't a decision to wait.
No.
And Dad was healthy at that time or not?
Yes and no.
He knew he had arthritis.
Yeah.
So you would have had children earlier, but that's just not the way.
Didn't
things
happen.
And you were working at that time before?
I was working up to the 6th month.
And he was, at that point?
He was working for Killam Hopkins and Greeley. When we got married, he was working for Killam Hopkins and Greeley, but for no pay.
Yeah.
Then when he told him that he was going to get married and he needed a little time off, they gave him $5 a week salary. And then a little bit later, they really realized what they had there, and they gave him more money. And at that time, he got another job with Weinbaum and Wexler for more money. He was doing fine. Then Dave Abrahams came to him and said, look,
Where did you meet Dave?
they sort of knew each other somehow from a long time ago in the neighborhood when they were children. And I don't know where he met or when this all came about, but he obviously had become aware of Dad's expertise.
Yeah.
And he said, come work with me. And he thought about it, and he did. He left Weinbaum and Wexler, and he went to work for Dave.
So Liam was born around the time that the house was being planned or built, and
Leon was a year old when we moved in.
Mm-hmm. So you were, when he was an infant while the house was being designed.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a big step, obviously.
Oh, obviously.
But things were looking pretty good at that time.
We didn't have the money to put down.
This was right during the war, right in the middle of the war. Right?
Yes. But Jenny gave us a very nice gift.
Towards the
Toward
house? Or at that point towards the house?
Toward the house.
You say Jenny, you didn't say Max.
I didn't say Max, did I?
Yeah. Can you say
I said
anything more
Jenny.
about that?
That's it. I don't know what went on behind their doors. I knew a lot later, but I didn't know then.
Yeah. Well, she had her own money, obviously, or something.
She had her knivel. She put her own money away somehow. And then when things became so affluent with them, they had to divert some of their money to family because if you didn't, the tax would have been difficult. And he got into some kind of trouble that way with a crazy attorney.
Max, you're talking.
Yeah.
So Jenny helped with the house.
She helped with a money gift.
I didn't know that. So that sort of got you off the ground.
It did help us to make the down payment in order to get a mortgage. Of course, we had to handle it from there on.
Yeah. So Lena was born, and then it was Belmont Public Schools for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you choose Belmont?
Why did we choose Belmont? Because the Zarens said, move to Belmont.
You knew them already from what?
We knew them already from Mary and Maury Levin. And in fact, Clarence and Maury and Dad used to go horseback riding together. I don't think Clarence played golf, but Dad played golf with Maury now and then, way back then. And one thing led to another. They lived in Belmont in a nice two-family house, and they wanted us to come move to Belmont, rent another apartment
So
near
how
them.
was it for you to build the house and move in and everything?
What do you mean, how was
I
it?
mean, this was.
I loved it.
Had you ever lived in a single-family house before?
Never. I loved it. I loved it. The only thing I had any question in my mind about was the location, because the street was not finished. It was all very rural, but the railroad was down there, and this was down here, and people who Jewish families that wanted to buy or build in other areas couldn't get in.
In Belmont.
Yeah. And that was my only question. So we were persuaded that the area is going to be built up. Look at all this beautiful farmland. Who would have thought that that was not exactly what was going to happen? But we did build, we did move in. I really loved it. I still love it. I wish I could afford to keep it up, and I just can't. Financially and physically, it's just becoming insurmountably difficult for me. So I have really loved it. I loved watching it grow from the blank piece of paper.
How did your father relate to Dad?
We loved him. Insurmountably difficult for me. So I have really loved it. I loved watching it grow from the blank piece of paper.
How did your father relate to Dad?
We loved him. Everybody loved your father.
Do you think that your parents' marriage was a good one, or?
Yes,
whatever?
it was a good one. It was a very good one. They had their ups and downs. It was a good one. She was kind of flighty.
I even knew that.
Yeah.
And any particular manifestations of that?
No, this was just her nature.
She didn't really have any qualms about bending the truth when it suited her, if I remember.
Yeah, right.
Um,
But I loved her. We got along fine. I get along fine. Because your father and I couldn't do all the things for her that Priscilla and Maury did.
Financially, you mean?
Yeah.
Later on, you mean?
Yeah. Vacations in Florida, a whole winter in Florida, and the things that they did for her, like they try to do for me.
Well, you paid your dues early with your contributions to the family.
I don't ever think about that. It was just what you did.
Everyone did that?
I don't know about everyone. I don't know about everyone.
Well, let's see now. And Priscilla met Maury where?
Same place that I met your father, on the beach. His parents had a place there for the summer. My parents had a place there for the 2 weeks my father was with the National Guard.
And, I see. Why explain that? Why for the 2 weeks that he was with the National Guard? I mean, he would be away.
He would be away at camp.
I see. So it would be.
And my mother took a place with kitchen privileges.
Yeah.
First at the Revere Beach area, and then at Oak Island.
And Maurice's father was already in the gumming business.
Yeah.
And he worked for his father his whole life.
Oh, yeah.
And did Priscilla ever work?
Yeah, she was a dental assistant.
Oh, yeah.
One of my parents' friends was a dentist, and he and his wife were friendly with my mother and father, and he could use a dental assistant. She never went to dental school.
No training. No formal training.
No, hands-on. And she became very adept. To such a point when this man started drinking himself to death, she got a job in town on Washington Street at I can't remember the name of the dentist right this minute, but She worked there for a long time until things began happening there. Mara made her quit, and after that, he would not permit her to work. And they weren't even engaged to be married at that point, but he didn't want her there or anywhere.
And they lived a few places before Lanark Road, or where did they? Was that their bridal?
That was where they started.
So they stayed there till they built
Yeah.
successful. He was
Yeah.
successful enough to build
Yeah.
a house,
Mhm.
Cleveland Road.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, let's see. What else? Did we leave out anything that I would be unlikely to know about? That
If you can think of anything, ask me. I don't know how deep you want to go into some of this stuff.
well, I am interested in other things. Well, now, what about your mother's situation with her relatives as she grew older?
Went from bad to worse.
What happened?
Well, the association with her sister Betty was always a warm one. The two ladies were very much alike. You know, they really.
But I don't feel
Love-
I know her, so.
Betty? No, you wouldn't have remembered her. It's her son and daughter who are getting this Kaminsky family
Uh-huh.
togetherness. And the daughter says she remembers me, but I don't remember her at all. Her other cousin, I do remember because I used to spend some time at her house when I was a little girl. Aunt Alice. She was nice. These were all stepsisters. But the oldest one, Rose, was a terror. Then there was the son, Maurice, who changed his name to Dwayne Marshall. He was a very accomplished violinist, but he had orchestras, and he's Dwayne Marshall.
Yeah.
A contraction of our Macy, evidently.
Yeah.
So he worked for one of the chemical companies, and he decided early on, oh, I can do that. So he formed the Package Chemical Company, making small packages of the same thing to distribute to small around your neighborhood druggists. And he did very well with that. And he had two sons, one of whom was MS. And he's the one that made contact with Mark, our Mark Greenbaum. And as it turned out, they sort of were both in wheelchairs at that point, close to it. So they became kind of friendly, which made Mark receptive to getting together bit. He was married to Abby Abrams, who was a graduate of Mass College of Art, a very accomplished artist. And I had seen much of her work. She was very good. She did a lot of commercial work. Very, very professional, very good. She always had a big smile, and she was delightful. And I had the feeling that she probably had really dragged her husband out of, he was a very retiring kind of a guy in spite of the music. He should have been a symphony player, really. He was that good, but she, I think, is the one who persuaded him or helped him along to build up the Package Chemical Company. You can still see the trucks out on the street, although there aren't many more small neighborhood drugstores anymore. So, what was my point there? You asked me what her
relations with her family.
Okay. Betty, on the other hand, became pregnant too soon. Too soon. And I came to realize later on that here I was sleeping in the same bed with a woman who was pregnant and wasn't married, because we slept in the same big bed when she would stay with us, and how my father was instrumental in getting her boyfriend to agree to marry her. And he was
Your father helped Betty's work. Well, he.
Shotgun wedding.
Your father, not Betty's father.
No, my father.
Why did he wind up playing that role?
I don't know.
Okay.
Took him by the lapels, I guess, and so I'm snickering when I was sitting and having lunch with these delightful people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say, you know, if it wasn't for my father, you wouldn't be legal.
Why did you hold that back? Don't you think?
Why
that's
should
the
I have
sort-
said that?
Isn't that the sort of thing they want to know? Isn't that what they're trying to find out?
I didn't go into that.
So,
Like
well,
Priscilla
but-
needled me afterwards. Why don't you tell them that
Well, but they're going to go to this. When was the thing? Was it already?
it's Sunday, this week, Sunday.
So who knows? I wonder what they're going to do there. Are they going to make any record or?
I don't know. I am not going. I don't want to
Okay.
dredge up any more than I'm dredging up now. I would really
Oh,
much rather not do this.
I'm curious.
Okay.
I mean, you've made a point of not going to this thing, it seems.
Exactly.
And
You've got nothing
Yeah,
against these people. They're lovely people.
yeah. Well, what is it then?
I wasn't there. I don't know what made some people do what they did.
Okay.
I just don't know. I don't know why I never
Why
heard.
do you think
What?
Priscilla is interested in going?
She's interested from the standpoint of Mark's association with the young man who ultimately was killed in an automobile accident. He had had his car all fixed up with all the things so that he could drive, and some kind of a tragic accident ended his life.
Okay, now you told the story of Max Kaminsky and Dad disapproving of your being involved with him
Absolutely.
and his fast crowd.
Yeah, because my father by then had seen all kinds of stuff with dope, with reefers, with people. And remember, this was Prohibition,
Mm-hmm.
and in some of the places, he just
That's your father, but
my father.
But you said it was your husband who said, "Don't be involved with those people."
Because he too became aware of the kind of a life, you know.
Well, what was your so they disapproved, he disapproved, your father disapproved. How did you actually? Do you recall, meeting some of them somewhat famous people and this?
Didn't make any difference to me.
And were you interested? Did you think
No.
it was?
When Artie Shaw played in Boston, when he
Mhm.
was with shows that
Mhm.
opened up here, he would make sure that my grandmother had tickets through Maxie, I guess. And I'd go to the shows and front row seats and all like that, but didn't make any difference to me. I didn't think too much of Artie Shaw anyway.
As a person or as a musician?
As a person.
What about Max Kaminsky though?
Well, I loved him. He was only 3 years older than me. He was born when my mother was here. This is what she came into, a
Mhm.
whole nest of a whole bunch of little kids she didn't even know.
Mm-hmm. So he was your
He was
half
my
uncle.
He was my uncle.
Your uncle. 3 years older than you.
Yeah. He used to come to our house for trumpet lessons. My father taught him. He wrote a book all about his life as a trumpet player, but he never referred to my father, not once.
So in your house growing up, no, you mentioned that's right. In your house growing up, what was the religious thing? I mean, you knew you were Jewish. Was there high holidays? Was there candles? Was there anything? But you knew you were Jewish and you spoke Yiddish, or they spoke Yiddish.
My mother did. She would toss in a few phrases.
No, Grandpa.
But
yeah.
my father was involved with the, not Boston Symphony, what was it called? Another symphony, which is still in existence. And he used to go to rehearsals at some big theater every Sunday morning. And I said, Priscilla, come to temple with me. Rabbi Harry Levy, Temple Israel, which is in the building which is now.
What gave you the idea to do that?
I wanted to know who I am. I had seen enough. I had gone to shul with my mother's stepfather. I knew there was something going on. I had read, and I was intrigued because this is my roots. I know where my mother came from. You follow me? The germ was always there. I wanted to know more. So I went to Temple Israel on Sunday mornings during the rehearsal, and Priscilla and I became regulars. We were never members as such. And then through Dad, your father, I was involved with the temple that my soon-to-be,
In Mattapan?
yeah,
That place that I went to.
yeah, that he
The
formed.
women were separate there, weren't they? Wasn't that pretty much Orthodox, or did we, I think, am I mistaken about that?
Yes, yes. But the one that I was more involved with was the place in which we were married, which is now a black school,
No, yeah.
um, with the famous rabbi who married us. But there was a youth group there, junior league,
Yeah.
and your father and all the hillsides belonged to that, and that's where they did their shows and everything. I became very much interested and involved there, and I just wanted to know more and more and more.
Huh? Yeah.
Um, with the famous rabbi who married us, but there was a youth group there, junior league,
Yeah.
and your father and all the hillsides belonged to that, and that's where they did their shows and everything. I became very much interested and involved there, and I just wanted to know more and more and more.
Yeah.
That's all.
And then, but when you first married, you didn't have a very religious household. That came somewhat later, after Leon. Really.
It was emerging. Started with the Friday night candles, and it started. Then, of course, when we moved to Belmont, we joined the community center, and I studied at the little Hebrew that I picked up was when Rabbi Roman came on.
Well, thank you very much for reviewing these things with me. It's I don't always have it completely straight. When the Polack family name, that you happen to know the history, how you get Polack for a family name from people from England and Holland?
Well, Harry R. Feldman was going to Holland, and I said, I know that part of my father's family came from Holland. What big city? And I said, and one of them was an actor. And it would be fun to know if there's anybody by that name still. Amsterdam. So when I came back, they laughed and said, there were about 50 pages of Polacks in the phone book.
Huh.
I said, well, they must all be cousins.
Right.
Are they all redheads with a dimple in their chin? I said, well, we didn't see them all.
Okay, well, thank you. What's today's date, so I can have a mental
Today
memory?
has to be
August
15th?
15th, 1995. Okay, well, we're going to stop this and...
It's a very dull story.
Well,
There are many more things.
someday my kids are going to ask about it, and I will then be able to tell them a little bit. Which I might
They'll get the impression that both your father and I went from one thing over to another thing, and that there was nothing in between, and there were a lot of things in between. But compared to other people's lives, I'm sure it was very, very mundane.
Well, if you ever want to give me more background, I'd be glad to have it. I guess this is probably enough for one sitting, but...
Oh, I think so.